Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to Mad Max. Why is that? It's Mad Max week, baby. Over on Retro Rewind, I watched Mad Max Fury Road for the first time. I also may have had a very unpopular opinion on that movie, but nonetheless, that's been up this week. Then we have Furiosa, which is out right now. We're gonna do our first ever brand new movie review on Retro Rewind, so make sure to subscribe up over there to check out all the Mad Max stuff we're doing. And naturally, to round things out, we gotta talk about the Mad Max game, y'all. This one came out in 2015, and in my very harsh review, I definitely overlooked a lot of its strengths. This is one of those younger Maddie reviews that I chalk up to a learning experience. Did I get it wrong? I wouldn't say so. There was a lot of Ubisoft open world design fatigue at that point in the industry, hence why a game like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which nowadays I'd say was actually a very good game, got booed out of the industry because people were so tired of it. So any game with this sort of formula, even with free flow combat, even with great car combat, just didn't resonate as deeply as it should have. It's a game that deserved better and definitely didn't have the best of timing on its side. It still did well enough, people enjoyed it, but for me, I definitely went a lot harder on this game than nowadays I would have, because quite frankly, nowadays I would have loved to have another game like Mad Max. And we're gonna get into why, because it's not the best game of all time, but there's some stuff in here, y'all, that we've been asking for in a lot of other games, and they did it first, so we'll get into that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into nostalgic and retrospective content, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. We just did a Paper Mario for the first time ever video this week, so don't worry, I got you covered on Retro Rebound. I'm talking to you, comment section. I see you all. I see your jokes. You're very funny. All right, enough of that. Like I mentioned, my initial review was harsh. I think fair, but harsh. It just felt overly familiar. So what has changed since then? Well, open worlds have become a lot more about freedom. I look at games like Dragon's Dogma 2. I look at games like Elden Ring, and these are very much unscripted experiences. Something can just happen in the world, and that is your story to tell. It of course has its very big moments that are set up by the developers, but a lot of it is about player agency. Back then, however, and for many years, AAA open worlds were heavily guided. Set a waypoint after hitting some tower, and run to your next objective and check a bunch of things off your list. It was a checklist open world. That's what Mad Max was, that's what Mafia 3 was, that's what every Ubisoft game was. It's definitely a taste that many people like. For me, I had my era of checklist open worlds up until about, I'd say 2018, 2019. Started to get really tired of those. But I said that nowadays, Mad Max is doing things that people would want to see. And I think it's that jack of all trades approach. It has wonderful hand-to-hand combat because it uses the free flow system. It has really great, competent car combat. It makes use of it in fun ways like races as well. At the same time as having a really cool post-apocalyptic open world to explore. For me, as a Fallout junkie, this game I had on my radar purely because of that. All I ever heard was, Maddie, check out Mad Max because you like Fallout. Because Fallout was inspired by Mad Max. Now, while I have yet to see the original Mad Max movies, I will say you can see the Fallout DNA in any Mad Max piece of media. The barren, open wasteland, the overwhelming sense of we're never gonna get out of this, are we? That's engulfed this entire wasteland. It's absolutely wonderful. I love how this game has complete open expanses of nothingness when you're driving around, because it just lets the vehicle do its thing, where I'm used to the more on foot travel in my post-apocalyptic worlds like a Fallout game. So to have one based around a vehicle with some real impressive visuals, especially for its time, does a lot for it. But yeah, many open worlds have a jack of all trades approach, but this one with its mixture of free flow and car combat are doing things that we just wish we could see nowadays. I'd love to see more liberal use of the free flow combat system. It's the best combat system in gaming if you were to ask me. Starting with Arkham City, I was like, this is goated, put in any game possible. And we started to get that. You'd see games like Shadow of Mordor appear, and it would have that free flow combat system. You'd also see Mad Max pop up. It had free flow combat. And this is where we saw WB also start to slow things down. Afterwards, we didn't really see free flow combat ever pop up again. Even in situations where it would have made sense, like Gotham Knights, it didn't appear. I don't know if this was out of preservation for the system itself, like, hey, we don't want people to get tired of this. And I can respect and understand that. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing, but damn it, when you look at this combat system, you start to want more and more. When you have the brutality of Batman captured so well, and then you add a sword in the mix, like you see here in Shadow of Mordor, the question is, what can you do with Mad Max? Guns and bone breaking, baby. And I'm talking putting Batman to shame levels of bone breaking. Chris Nelson wrote in on our Patreon, like you can over at patreon.com/retrorevive, and he put it brilliantly. Name a better punch. Oh, wait. Hey, newsflash, it doesn't exist. I forgot how amazing the sound design in this game is. Whoever was in the sound design team cooked a glorious meal here of bone crunchy goodness. I mean, my God, when you max out the Fury meter and start pounding flesh, it is nasty, dude. It is, actually, is pounding flesh a sec? You know what? When you start beating bad guys up, this is one of the most satisfying combat systems just by sound alone. You get into that same rhythm of free flow, you counter enemies that are attacking you. You could also just, pull out a shotgun and blast someone away. You can do that, why not? But oh my gosh, when that Fury meter builds up, you are wrecking people. It is so sad. It's worth the price of admission for that alone. I'm not even kidding. I'm not trying to sell you high. Just here, Josh, do us a favor. Play for the lovely viewers out here just a little clip of combat of me just beating some butt. Listen with your own ears when that Fury meter ramps up. It is wonderful. So yeah, you can't say Mad Max can take credit for something that was invented by Rocksteady, but damn did they make good use of it. I love the combat in this game because I've always loved free flow, and now you add a level of brutality, lethality, I'm sorry, and you've got me won over. So the combat, hand-to-hand wise, has aged phenomenally well. Then there's the other element of the combat, the cars. I don't know if I'm like really bad at video games all of a sudden. Stop and tell me if I am, but the handling in the early parts of this game, I mean, I'm literally going to show you clips where it looks like I have never picked up a controller before, or this is my first time doing so in months. And I'd like to say I'm a decent video game player. I'm not quite there in my age yet where my skills are beginning to atrophy. There are moments like in first-person shooters, I'm like, dang, not as quick as I used to be in high school, but that's okay. I'm still really good at this. But oh my God, there are moments I'm driving this car and I'm just swerving off the road, driving into rock walls. Like, it's the way the camera works at the same time as how reactive the car is to my left analog stick. I just could not get into a rhythm with the cars until I got my full vehicle. I started to get some upgrades in. Then I got a little bit more comfortable, but those early goings, I don't remember having a problem with the handling at all. Again, I was a little younger when I first played this game. This is almost a decade old. Oh my God, it's almost a decade old. Whoa. But yeah, nonetheless, car handling, wasn't crazy about it, but when you're in those open expanses of the wasteland, kind of doesn't matter. You just get to go wherever, whenever, run into cars, beat people up, have a blast. There are upgrades you can get from your engine to your exhaust to your handling to the armor of your car, etc. How do you do this? You complete objectives in the open world. So as you're going from point A to point B, you're gonna find yourself a big hot air balloon. You're gonna ride that sucker to the top, take out your little telescope, mark a bunch of things on your map, all these different objectives that you can do. These are things like towers that you can knock down. You can wipe out some forts. You can loot some areas. You can restock on food and water, find some gears. And as you do all of this, the power in the area will decrease. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but as you're completing a lot of these objectives, you're gonna find parts, scraps, and you can use this for those vehicular upgrades. You'll also eventually unlock perk points for Max himself, and you can upgrade him as a character, and it eventually becomes a completion fest. The game has a lot of content, and like I mentioned, as you knock down all of the objectives in every part of the open world, you'll start to decrease that power level, and it'll remind you a little bit of something like Mafia 3. See, this was a weird stretch for open world games. There was the fatigue of the Ubisoft design. It felt like every idea was only incrementally moving things forward. I just mentioned how Mad Max had a very similar system to something like Mafia 3, and those games were barely a year apart. By the way, I'm a bit of a Mafia 3 apologist. I think that game is awesome from a story front. Absolutely loved it on that level. I think the open world unfortunately got boring, but they share that same system of whittling down power levels and taking down the big bad at the end for that region. And that's why I think a lot of games during this mid-20 teens era were very unappreciated. And I'm guilty as charged. It's no coincidence that there's 2 open world games from that same year, in Assassin's Creed Syndicate as well as Mad Max, that I both went, yeah, I didn't really like this at all in my reviews, although I tried to be fairly critical of them and tried to be honest about what I did like. I feel I appreciate them more now because they've had time to breathe, and you also recognize you're not in the moment of that zeitgeist, which I don't think many people recognize when they're reviewing products. It's something that through this channel I've learned and tried to enhance my own reviews when I do them day one here and on Mr. Matty Plays, of understanding that there's going to come a time where you're not a product of the moment. I'll take a good example is my Hellblade review. I made my Hellblade review in the heat of a time where Xbox has all eyes on them. Everyone's hoping for a win. But does that really matter a couple of years from now when we're looking at the game individually and you're removed from that moment? One of the best things I learned as a critic is to remove yourself from the emotionality of the situation surrounding the game and just critique the game as it is. Looking back at it, I definitely reviewed Mad Max and Assassin's Creed Syndicate as games that I was talking about the consistent fatigue of where we were in the industry at that point in time. And I think that has absolutely a place in it. If you've seen a consistent amount of the same thing in the industry, it's gonna play a factor on the other reviews. I think as long as you acknowledge it, which I personally failed to do when I watched back on these reviews, that's where there's a problem. Anyway, that's my my long-winded way of saying I've learned a lot. I think there's a place in this industry for the Ubisoft style checklist open world. It's there and it's popular because it's good. It can be very fun. It's just about what you do within that checklist that's great. I look at Ghost of Tsushima, which we also talked about recently, and Ghost of Tsushima resonated so much with me because, yeah, it's a checklist open world, but I'm writing haikus in this game. I'm dueling people in epic cutscenes in this game. Like, that's why Ghost of Tsushima worked, because the objectives are so wildly different. It was not afraid to change things up a little bit, and I do think Mad Max falls into that same bucket. Still got a little bit more to go. I got a complete in-box experience for you. We're gonna go through Mad Max on PS4, and then we'll talk a little bit more about a sequel. Here we have Mad Max on the PlayStation 4 by Avalanche and WB Games. On the back of the box here, we have A World Gone Mad. Build your legend as Mad Max, construct the ultimate survival machine, and tame the savage wasteland. Now you're probably thinking like, oh, of course, typical modern complete in-box experience, but this is one of the most interesting ones I've ever experienced, right? I'm gonna show you why. Here on the inside, look at that, a manual? No way. This is 2015, y'all. All right, so this alone, just the front cover art, rare. Usually you just get one of those slips or they use the reverse side of the cover art to give you a bit of a health warning. Now we have the disc here, looking great. Nothing on the reverse side here. That's okay though. You know where they spent the money? They decided to make a little booklet here. More importantly, someone cared. Someone knew this thing mattered. And inside the health and safety warnings, they just squeezed in one singular random illustration of the game. And on the back side here, just get more art. So yeah, that's it. You literally open it, it's just a random image, and then the rest of the booklet as you would see fit. Normally, this just doesn't happen in all of my complete box experience. You don't find anything like pertaining to the game on a visual level here. So I don't know, maybe I'm just geeking out because I'm just so into this type of stuff, but I thought this was so strange, but I'm happy it's there because now I get a nice booklet in there. I got something of value in there. And you look at that, a beautiful complete box experience of Mad Max on PS4. It actually is worth owning physically. All right, wrapping things up, Connor McCurdy writes, in this cruel world we live in, it will never happen, but if we were ever to get a sequel to this game, what new features, mechanics, or systems would you like to see get added? Personally, I'd love to see the Nemesis system added. It would fit the Mad Max world perfectly. I don't want to cheap out on this answer because I've thought about it a lot with the sequel to Mad Max. You know, you think about it as this weird random game that just kind of happened out of nowhere. I mean, it was timed out with the movie, but I wasn't really tapped into movie culture, maybe like I am nowadays, where here we are doing a video for Furiosa. But back then, as it's shown on Retro Rewind, clearly not. But I've thought about this game as just sort of a random happening and how it would be kind of interesting if it did get a sequel one day. And certainly I think it's deserving of it. And I don't mean to jack your answer here, but yeah, I think when you're looking at WB properties and how this game feels like an amalgamation of all these WB properties, like you get the freeflow combat, like what other WB thing would I want to see in here? Oh yeah, the Nemesis system, and it's perfect. I would love to see a post-apocalyptic game take full advantage of the Nemesis system. It's one of the best systems in gaming, and that's why it's so annoying that they trademarked it and copywrote it and just made sure that no one could ever take those ideas and try to iterate upon them in any games outside of WB, it's really frustrating. So when you have this WB published product here, maybe we could work something out in a Mad Max 2 video game where you do get that free flow combat as well as a little bit of love here for the Nemesis system. I mean, like, imagine getting the car combat with like a lieutenant of a faction because you took out the leader and he heard about it and so he came to find you, or another captain that you tried to beat the life out of in free flow combat got away from you, and so now you got to find him later in like another fort. Like, that living world feel in a Mad Max style game, or any post-apocalyptic game for that matter, would be excellent. I mean, that's why the Nemesis system is wonderful. It's literal excellence, and it's just a damn shame that no one can take it and iterate upon it or use it in any way. And right now, as we record this video, Monolith, the company behind the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War games, has been dead quiet as they work away on a Wonder Woman game, which I hope we see more of soon. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, Mad Max, this is a really fun game to this point in time. I have to say, time has been kind to it. And so I definitely recommend it if you haven't checked it out up until this point and you're craving a little Ubisoft style open world. I know there's still a dime a dozen nowadays, but I really do think with the car combat, the free flow, and the brutality of the game, there's a lot here that you may actually appreciate. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to seeing your thoughts on Mad Max down below. Hopefully I see you over on Retro Rewind as well, where we're going to be talking about Furiosa. Mad Max Fury Road is already up. We also have a lot more on the way. Call sheet just firing on all cylinders. We are beginning our Nolan trilogy retrospective over there. Got a lot going on. Of course, thank you to all the patrons who continue to support us. Appreciate you immensely. And with that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.